The education system in the UK is broken.
First reason is chronic underfunding and massive budget cuts.
The school system has never changed. Like, they teach you the same stuff.
Why aren't our kids being shown how to manage money, how to invest properly, how to understand what compounding is all about?
The UK used to have one of the best education systems in the world, one of the most funded at least.
The government gave them 200k less this year than they did last year, funding.
The government is probably going to destroy universities to try and beat reform.
I mean, most of you will already be aware that the educational system in the UK was primarily designed to create industry workers, okay? And very little has actually changed since then.
Are you seriously trying to fail our kids and you just want them to be robots, right? You want them to be robots and employees to make somebody else rich, and so they pay their taxes.
Parliament is about to make this law. Every single kid is going to have to follow the national curriculum. That's top down, one size fits all, no escape.
This has massively increased teacher burnout, and the amount of resignations that are taking place get more and more every single year.
Even though I've repeatedly said that the state of the education system is not teachers' fault. And people get mad at me because basically they don't want to believe that children in schools are increasingly at risk of mental health issues or at risk of not getting the qualifications or skills they need to actually function in adult life.
It breaks my heart to think of so many teachers that are in the same position that I was not so long ago, where they feel like they cannot go into school and they cannot teach anymore. Where are we going to be in 20, 30 years if all those teachers have left?
Welcome back to Brit Rants, where we call out a country that claims to value education, then underfunds schools, burns out teachers, and leaves students behind. The UK education system is on life support, cramped classrooms, underpaid staff, kids learning in crumbling buildings with mould on the walls. Meanwhile, private schools thrive, and politicians send their kids there while ours are stuck with the leftovers. They say education is the key to a better future, but in today's Britain, it feels more like a postcode lottery. If you're working class, good luck getting the same chance. Today we're diving into the raw TikToks from teachers, parents and students who've had enough. Hit subscribe if you're tired of being told there's no money, while they pour billions into everything but the future.
3 reasons the UK education system is a complete and utter fail. First reason is chronic underfunding and massive budget cuts. The UK used to have one of the best education systems in the world, one of the most funded at least. Since 2010, the government have promised budget increases for schools across England specifically, and what has happened? Nada. Whilst little government grants have been given out here and there, since 2010, basically nothing has been done. All they've done is recommend shows like Adolescence, which have no relevance to UK life. And what's their reasoning for this? Inflation. That's it. That's all they come to. The shortages in UK classrooms have gotten so bad that literally affording stationery, basic standard equipment, paper, pens, rulers has become a problem for most schools, especially those that are public. There are much larger class sizes now and a lot less one-to-one personalized teaching, which is probably a much more effective way than teaching 100 kids in one classroom. This has massively increased teacher burnout, and the amount of resignations that are taking place get more and more every single year. Which means for those teachers that haven't resigned, that are on really low incomes, they have to account for those losses, for those understaffing issues. Extracurricular activities like drama and physical activity have seen massive declines amongst schools in recent years in terms of participation and funding from the government. And every single day since 2010, the funding has been lower than prior to 2010. That is insane. 2 is an over-reliance on standardized testing, just tests essentially. If you put a monkey, an elephant and a crocodile in the same room and tell them to climb a tree, which one do you think will do it quicker and which one do you think will look like they have the best results? Think about it. In the UK, we are all tested in the exact same way. And like I said before, there's not really any specialized learning anymore, meaning that everybody's taking the same test with completely different skill sets. I can tell you right now that GCSE and A-level were the 2 worst periods of my life, and I never felt so uncomfortable. Not only are you getting tested completely unfairly, it's the environment, the conditions that you are put in order to prepare and both take these tests. And the way these schools make it feel like is that it's do or die. You literally have no choice, and if you don't make it, if you don't get something out of this, then you are basically unlucky and can't make a career out of it. Obviously, that's not true because of a thing like social media. But you are made to think that it is the most important thing that's ever happened to you in your life. And for some it may be, but for most it definitely is not. And in the UK, we wonder why so many children, so many teenagers have increased stress, depression levels, and so many other issues. But it's really coming down to things like this. Non-academic skills are completely undervalued. If you have academia, then you have everything. If you don't have the academia, then you don't even know your own worth because they never address this to you. So flawed and so silly. Motivation, morale, discipline amongst young people has never been lower than it has right now in the UK. 3 is inequality and regional disparities that completely determine how well you're going to do in school. Specifically in Wales and the north of England, the funding is absolutely minimal, especially in these rural communities. They are getting basically no education, and the education they're getting is basically directing them towards a path they're not choosing. They don't get options. You are told to do this, you are from this community, you have to do this, and you don't have much say in it. After all, the opportunities are limited when you live in these communities. The north of England has a huge disparity between there and the south. And if you're not born in London, if you're not born in Manchester or some major city, you basically have your career chosen for you, or you have limited options. And private schools completely dominate the pathway towards university. If you want to get into university coming from a public school, you have to do something exceptional to get in, which is not fair because talent is everywhere. The students have less access to quality education and they don't even realise their full potentials. What a terrible school system we have, and it's incredibly unfair depending on where you're born, which it shouldn't be. Those are 3 reasons why the UK school system is an absolute joke and absolutely finished.
The educational system in the UK is broken. I mean, most of you will already be aware that the educational system in the UK was primarily designed to create industry workers, okay? And very little has actually changed since then. If anything, things seem to be going backwards. Like, what is this about paying to get kids out of school during term time, huh? Never mind that though, let's focus on what they're actually teaching kids over there, yeah? And let me tell you this, schools are probably the worst place for new negative self-limiting beliefs developing in kids. Having been on a major healing journey, I've identified a lot of my issues, a lot of my self-limiting beliefs stem from my school days. And I know nothing's changed. If anything, things have gotten worse. But listen, sitting here twining about it ain't gonna solve anything. I really highly doubt that anything's gonna change much when it comes to the educational system, no matter how much we harp on. However, this is where we as individuals hold all the power. Because all we have to change is ourselves, our mindset. This is about learning outside of school. This is about continuously developing skills, being creative, because we are all creative beings. However, school seems to be suppressing that. And don't get me started about this whole palaver of going to university and that being required. University is probably the biggest scam I have ever seen in my whole entire life. So unless you specifically need it to carry out the job that you're doing, and let's face it, it's mostly just medicine, then you're probably wasting your time and money. Because I've actually seen a client show me a statement of their student loan where the interest that they were being charged on that student loan was more than the repayments they were making. And this person was on good income. But anyways, I digress again with complaining. So what I'm saying here is, let's change ourselves, okay? Let's learn, let's see the world from a different perspective, and let's change the narrative as a collective, because that is the only way we can bring change about.
So the news is in that Moorland School in Clitheroe has closed. A heartbreaking letter from the headmaster, Mr. Jonathan Harrison, who says, "This has been the hardest decision of my life and one that I have tried very hard to avoid." He talks about the impact that this is having on the pupils. And let's remember, this is not happening at the end of the academic year. The school has announced today it is closing tomorrow. So for all of the students who were due to take GCSEs and A-levels this summer, their school is closing tomorrow. Can you imagine the disruption? And I don't want to hear a word from anyone about this school was going to close anyway, because I give you the word from the man that ran it himself. The impact on our pupils, their families and the staff has been a major consideration and has made the decision much harder. Sadly though, the school must live within its economic means, and despite our best efforts, the external factors that the school and their wider independent sector face have proven too strong. The number of independent schools facing closure nationally since the government's imposition of VAT on fees now totals 16 known schools during 2025. Despite our best efforts, our senior school has been operating below where it should have been for budgetary purposes. Compounding factors have taken their toll, such as deteriorating affordability, falling numbers for full fee paying parents, higher operating costs, VAT on school fees, the added cost of employers' national insurance announced in the budget, and ultimately owed fees that remain uncollected. We have explored every possible alternative, including parenting, partnering with other schools, but no viable option has been found. So do not tell me this is not down to the government, because it lies entirely at your door, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. Keir Starmer, you wouldn't let your son's revision be impacted by your own general election, yet these students have had no say and they have no opportunity to save their school. You and your actions have taken it away. You protected your own son. I tell you what, Keir Starmer, I tell you now, you get your mate Lord Ali on the phone and you fund that school to get them through their GCSEs and A-levels. It is the moral thing to do. It is the right thing to do. It is the compassionate thing to do. You were able to show compassion to your own son. Show it to all of these students. You are a disgrace. Rachel Reeves, you make me sick. And I don't say that lightly. You had a choice. You had a choice not to bring this in now. You had a choice to bring this in September 2025. And don't tell me that the VAT policy is earning more than you thought it was. How do you know? Show me the figures. Have you collected that VAT yet? No. It is lies. It is all lies. This is down to you and your sister wanting to get rid of private education. Well, you are wholly responsible for the absolute disruption and devastation of tens of thousands of children across this country. And right now, you are wholly responsible for the poor outcome of these kids' GCSEs and A-levels. My God, I hope they pass them all. And I hope they take positions in government. And I hope they take you down.
I want people's thoughts on this because I think this is so weird. The school system, like for example, when you go from year 7 to year 11, it's never changed. Like, they teach you the same stuff, which is crazy to me because the world has advanced so much, so quickly, but the school system literally never changes. Personally, I think it's because they don't want us to know about money and how money works. So they program us from such a young age to be employees forever. Yeah, you can learn about business and stuff, and you're learning how to run a business from somebody that never actually has had a business. Don't even start me on that one. But do you understand what I'm saying? I want people's opinions on this because this is what I think. And this is why so many people think online income and things like that are too good to be true, because from such a young age you've been programmed to only believe that there's one way of making money, but there's not.
Just had a brilliant conversation with a head teacher just about what's going on in UK schools at the moment, and it's kind of the same story at pretty much every school I go to at the moment. She said the government gave them 200k less this year than they did last year funding, so they can't really afford TAs. And what I can see is the Senko is through the roof. The amount of children who can't sit still, who can't focus, who kind of have additional needs which just aren't being met. And the head basically said, well, there's a 3-year waiting list for the government for them to kind of get assessed. So basically you've got a whole system where, because they're not being assessed, they can't give extra support or extra funding. So basically the poor teachers have kids spinning around, running around, trying to teach 30 other children with no money. Most teachers are saying to me at the moment, I'm buying pens, I'm buying paper, I'm buying all the resources out of my own pocket. And as we know, they're not exactly paid that well. So the teachers are doing an awesome job, but they're just firefighting at the moment. So yeah, every school saying, oh, we're 50, 60, 70, 80k in deficit this year, got no money. And basically, yeah, they're in pretty bad way. They said the sports premium is kind of still ring fenced, but they're not giving any kind of measure whether it's going to be next year or not, or whether it's going to be cut. So they're not spending any money, which obviously is fine, but it just means that the kids aren't getting the best education. They're not getting all the things that they can need, and the support they can really get.
The educational system in the UK is absolutely failing our kids, okay? Completely. The teachers are snowed under. They don't have the time to teach thoroughly and properly because the curriculum is so busy. Our kids are being failed by the government in the UK. It's absolute crap in the UK for education. When you look at other countries, seriously, they're still teaching the same old shit that we were being taught in the 1980s. And some of the subjects, why are they even in the curriculum? I don't know. Some of the topics within the subjects, that's massive, and you might have to teach the kids every single thing about history is one, just in case you get one question. But you have to know everything about history of a certain generation of a different country. What's the point? Unless you can actually go and do a degree in that subject, what is the bloody point? Why are these kids even being taught this? Why aren't our kids being shown how to manage money, how to invest properly, how to understand what compounding is all about? ISAs, SIPs in the UK, all of this kind of stuff. Passive income. Why aren't our kids being shown how to become entrepreneurs, how to create their own business plan? Seriously, are you seriously trying to fail our kids and you just want them to be robots, right? You want them to be robots and employees to make somebody else rich, and so they pay their taxes and they don't become millionaires, they don't become entrepreneurs, because no, the government don't want that. So do you agree with me? Drop a comment, because seriously, this has touched a nerve on me right now, because as parents are having to teach our own kids at home to get them through exams because the teachers cannot cope. There's too much in the curriculum. It's crazy. And because of the old system in the 80s has now come back, and there's no coursework involved, it literally comes down to the final exam. It's a memory test. So if some kids have got a bad memory, or they suffer with an exam environment and they get a bit anxious, they're going to fail. And that's not fair, because some of these kids will be good students and will be very successful throughout the year in school. But when it comes down to one final exam, they feel the pressure and they fail and they don't get GCSEs. Now, come on. We got rid of that system in the 80s because kids in those days were having asthma attacks, anxiety attacks, all sorts. They got rid of it. They brought coursework in as a percentage of their overall result. Come on, seriously. You as an adult wouldn't be able to pass 22, 23 exams to get through your GCSEs, because who in the right mind can remember all that? It's nonsense.
Parliament is about to make this law. Every single kid is going to have to follow the national curriculum. That's top down, one size fits all, no escape. And the problem is, and it's a big problem, this is the wrong curriculum for the world we're heading into. It is the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. It's already passed through MPs. It's currently going through the House of Lords right now. It's not law yet, but the worrying thing for me is that it makes the direction crystal clear. They are tweaking the old system. They are doubling down on the old system rather than actually stepping up to do the hard thing that needs to be done to meet the moment that we're in for this tidal wave of AI that is coming our way. Homeschoolers, tracked and monitored, academies stripped of independence, every single school, every kid, doubling down on this old system that is already buckling under its own weight. And yes, of course, this system has delivered positive things. Our kids are doing better in standardized tests. But if you just look a little bit under the surface, our kids in the developed world rank near the bottom for life satisfaction. The study that came out just last week showed the UK is 20th out of 22 for human flourishing. If we're thinking, what is school for? And we're supposed to be preparing our kids for a life of meaning, purpose and joy, we are failing the test. we're failing the test. So here's my take. We are tying our kids' shoelaces together whilst telling them to sprint into a future that is going at the speed of Usain Bolt. We're teaching them to memorize answers that AI can already generate. We're preparing them for a job market that is going to be materially different from the one that we graduated into when we were young. And worst of all, and this is what really bothers me, it's like we're tweaking the system because it's easier than reimagining it, which is what this moment is calling for. And the thing that really gets me about this is that it doesn't have to be like this. Look at the Alpha School in the US. These are kids who are setting their own learning pace, they're mastering core skills in half the time, and then they spend the rest of the time practicing creative and project-based work. It's incredible what they're doing. Then listen to Sandra Milligan, right, presenting at the IB conference. She presented a well-researched, radical but practical rethink of assessment, value beyond grades, and actually helping our kids develop the skills and perspectives they are going to need to meet this moment. There was a guy on here that criticized me the other day, saying that people like me and my ilk are all about criticism and not about solutions. I'm sorry, but that's just fucking nonsense. It's just not true. There are people, there are institutions already doing the hard work of reimagining what this could look like. And I think what's just missing is the public consciousness and also the political will, the courage, the nerve to act, to do the difficult work that our kids need. And that's why I'm building the Oxbow Project. It is for families who know that the system isn't moving fast enough and want their kids to be prepared for the storm, not just conditioned to sit quietly in the rain.
To the students of the UK, you'll know that what I'm about to say sounds like a joke, but I assure you that this is the situation. We're paying loads of money on a half-assed education. We're not using facilities, not attending physically. Pre-recorded lectures, that's a joke. I'm thinking critically. It's something that you taught me to question inequality, like how I'm paying thousands for an hour fortnightly. It's safer staying home. You act like we don't know, but if you cut the price down, we'd all be on board. It's money over decency and not enough leniency, and we really don't appreciate our uni's complacency.
The education system in the UK is broken. Fact. That is the topic of this morning's video because last night when I sat scrolling through Facebook, I'm part of a Facebook group for teachers who want to leave. And the amount of comments in that Facebook group where teachers are just at absolute rock bottom, honestly, it's heartbreaking. The education system does not serve the children and the staff that are part of it. It's just broken. Something needs to change in order for it to nurture and teach the children that are in it. It's just not good, is it? Honestly. Please excuse my squiffy hair today. So I'm being a bit serious this morning. But it breaks my heart to think of so many teachers that are in the same position that I was not so long ago, where they feel like they cannot go into school and they cannot teach anymore. Where are we going to be in 20, 30 years if all those teachers have left? What's going to happen for my kids and their kids and their kids? What is the future of our education system if we don't do something and fix it? I don't know. Apologies, rant over, but I'm on a mission. I want to help as many teachers as I can to get out of that deep, dark hole that I found myself in so that they can carry on doing something that they love. But I think in order to do that successfully, we've got to look at changing the system, surely. Just doesn't work. Anyway, I apologise. If you're a teacher or a teaching assistant going into school this morning, get that smile on and go be awesome for those children. I know that is so difficult, especially when you're not in the right frame of mind, but you've got this. Honestly, you've got it. Have a good one. See you later.
The government is probably going to destroy universities to try and beat reform. This is bad. This, to me, is a minister who's laying the groundwork to blame someone else because they think that universities are about to go under. This is a minister saying, I know that the Home Office is about to further restrict international students, which will likely push some of the sector who are already struggling financially over the edge. And to soften the blow, I'm going to blame it on Vice-Chancellor's pay. Now, I'm probably someone who is more critical of university finances, and I don't think that they're blameless in this situation. But this is just such an insane act of self-vandalism. Basically, if you haven't seen it, we've got two things things going on. Last week, the Office for Students, who's the regulator for higher education in England, announced that almost half, so 43% of universities were in deficit last year. They were preparing for what they'd have to do if some universities had to close. At the same time, the Home Office is preparing their immigration white paper, where we expect there to be further restrictions on the number of international students who can come to the UK to study. Of course, international student fees, which are uncapped, are basically the only things keeping some institutions afloat. Do I think it's a good thing that institutions are so reliant on international student fees? No. Do I think the government has given any other way forward? Also, no. Basically, Labour saw the results of the local elections, in which Reform performed really well, and said maybe we should be more like them. Salma put a lovely tweet out and said that the Tories had lost control of our borders and he wasn't going to stand for it, and that he was going to restore control and cut migration. The issue with this is that immigration has already fallen by a third, and yet people feel that it's worse. What is it that makes the government think that cutting it further is going to make Reform voters like them? And the plan specifically to target international students also doesn't make sense, because the public really doesn't care about international students. Actually, when polled, only 4% of people in Great Britain think that the government should prioritise reducing the number of international students that come to study in the UK. For 4% of voters, they're going to send universities bust. I think universities could be more efficient. I think they could spend less. Do I want one to go bust? No. It's really quite depressing, actually, because about a year ago, I thought that the worst thing the Labour government was going to do to higher education was to not do anything and just let a couple of providers go bust, if that was what was going to happen. I didn't think that they would deliberately make it significantly worse.
Here's why I think the school system in the UK is absolutely messed up. So the biggest thing for me about the UK school system is the fact that they don't teach valuable skills at all whatsoever. So at A-levels, I studied business, maths, and DT product design. And you'd think, because I'd studied business, I would learn how to grow a business, scale a business, to start a business, and to deal with taxes, finances, credit, mortgages. None of these were taught in schools. And for me, coming out of uni and then looking back, it's just really been an upward hill struggle, learning all of these new things as I go along, which I feel like should have been taught to me in schools. Drop a comment down below, guys, and let me know exactly what you think.
I'm not fully convinced that that whole teachers are heroes thing that the government did during lockdown was basically a massive gaslighting project. I was thinking today about how people get really, really mad at me when I criticise the education system, even though I've repeatedly said that the state of the education system is not teachers' fault. And people get mad at me because basically they don't want to believe that children in schools are increasingly at risk of mental health issues or at risk of not getting the qualifications or skills they need to actually function in adult life. But if you think about it, the whole thing about teachers being heroes is very clever. It dehumanises teachers in a very interesting way. It places them on a pedestal, and it basically says teachers are heroes and therefore superhuman, and therefore they can put up with anything. It also means the government can turn around when teachers say, hey, 79% of us have had really bad mental health issues over the past year because of our jobs, and they can say, well, actually, you're stronger than that. Heroes are superhuman and they generally function without external resources. Teachers are increasingly having to do this. SEND training, provision and funding is rubbish. Teachers are buying stuff for their classroom with their own money. There's not enough classroom support. And the whole premise that teachers are heroes means that it gives parents who send their kids to school the idea that teachers are so superhuman that they can buffer the kids from this and that they can actually protect the children from the natural consequences of that, which is simply not true. Teachers are humans and they need resources. They need basic level of support to be able to do their job. And if they don't get that, what do you think happens to the quality of their work? And this is not a criticism on teachers. This is literally acknowledging the fact that they are humans in charge of 30 other small humans, which has always been completely insane to me, because imagine if a parent had 30 children. Do we think for 1 second that that parent would be giving those children the time and attention and education they need? Obviously not, because it's physically impossible. But somehow we expect teachers to do it because of this whole hero thing. And like clapping for the NHS, it's meant that the government can get away with saying, well, we do appreciate you, but only in lip service. Meanwhile, there are 200,000 children in schools that have been consistently failing, as in rated failing by Ofsted, for over 13 years. That means that children have gone into school and left the school system, and the whole experience that they've had has been in a failing school. And I'm not even saying that Ofsted ratings are the be-all and end-all. Of course they're not. I generally think they measure the wrong things. But it is indicative of the fact that the government will not put enough resources into schools to make it a good experience for people. Even when they are told by the national body that they trust to report back about schools, when they are told the schools are failing, they still don't do anything about it. No wonder there are so many parents considering not sending their kids back after Christmas. It's not remotely surprising, but it is disappointing because when you're told that there is a national education system, it should be decent. And what really gets me is with the way the economy's gone and the cost of living crisis, increasingly both parents and the family are having to work and they have to put their children somewhere where there is childcare, and that is generally school. And so it's really essential that now more than ever, school is a school system is a place where we can place our children and trust them to be safe. And unfortunately, in many cases, this is simply not true. England has one of the worst bullying rates in the world. If you are considering not sending your child back after Christmas, do watch my videos. I've got loads of free information, tips and support on how to start home educating. My kids have never been to nursery or school. I've been doing it nearly 12 years. It's nothing like lockdown schooling, I promise you that. And if you're worried about your work situation, my playlist on working and home educating might help you as well.
I feel like people don't always believe me when I tell them the genuine state of the UK education system right now. So I've decided that I'm going to try and tell you guys some stories. These are all stories that I've seen with my very own eyes, or things that I have personally experienced in my career as an educational consultant, a primary school deputy head teacher and a teacher of early years in Key Stage 1. I'm going to start with this one because this one really hurts me. I say hurt because at that time when this happened, I genuinely could not believe it. It went against my core ethos. It went against everything that I believe as a teacher of young children and what I know about child development. I'm just going to set the scene for you a little bit. So I was teaching in a school that had very high areas of deprivation. Children came into school with very low starting points. They also had difficulties with their language, their communication skills, their play skills. They just weren't developed yet where we'd like them to be in line with national expectations. So anybody can tell you that what these children need is play. They need opportunities to talk, to sing, to role play, to be free, to develop that language that's then going to support them with their writing and other areas of the curriculum. However, the executive head at the time did a walk around the school. She came into my classroom and I kid you not, she said to me, "That role play area there, that needs to go." I was teaching year 1 and 2 children. So these are children who are 5, 6 and 7. But developmentally, some of these children were working at around 18 months, 2 years, 3 years old. And I had to remove my role play area out of my classroom because I was told that is not suitable for a Key Stage 1 classroom.
Britain's kids deserve better. So do the teachers holding the system together with tape and overtime. Education isn't just about books and grades, it's about giving people a fair shot in life. But right now, it's failing the very people who need it most. Underfunded, undervalued, unfair. If you're a student, parent, or teacher, drop your experience in the comments. Subscribe if you're sick of the double standards, because if we don't fight for our schools, no one else will.